Chicago was really tough. It's probably one of the toughest races that I think I've ever done. And it's taken me a long time to sit down and digest. And I wanted to make a video breaking down exactly what happened at Chicago, how I felt and where my head was at when the race was done. And then I ended up doing basically a therapy session with my sports psychologist where we done a live recording of it. And I thought it's probably best to share that instead. And this was recorded way back in October. So after Chicago, the day I landed back in London. And I thought it would probably be the best version of a video that I can make to show you exactly what was going on in my mind live at the time when I had finished Chicago and had come back. We basically used it as a chance to mentally break down where my head was at during the race, after the race, before the race, and like what we can then do going forward and the things that we can take away going forward into the next race. So I thought that would be very, very useful. I'm still working with my sports psychologist today, so it is something that we are going to continue to work on. And if you do enjoy the next hour of this episode, then let me know and we'll see if we can do another live recording for you guys to digest and hopefully take some things away from. It really helped me understand why my race didn't go to plan and where I tapped out mentally and what I can do different going forward. Just a couple of life updates as well. One, as you can tell, my hair is missing, which is kind of funny. I'm no longer with hair. I didn't shave it to get more aerodynamic, but if it does help me get more aerodynamic, then happy days. And two, I've been really under the weather with this flu that's been going around. So as you could probably hear in my voice, I'm rather ill, but I won't ramble on any longer because it's already going to be a very long YouTube video. Apologies, it was filmed in vertical for social media, but we decided to put the whole episode on YouTube. So if you want to just turn off the video and just listen to me, then by all means. And if you do want to watch it in vertical, then by all means as well. But I am now going to cue the therapy session. Or sports psychology session, I should say.
So you just finished your biggest race of this year.
Yes.
But it wasn't your day.
Yes.
Why?
I think it was the perfect conditions for the day. I was going in the most confident I've ever been for a race, like the morning of. The weather was perfect. My training was unorthodox, but still quite successful. I ticked off the majority of the sessions that I had on the plan, and I felt like I'd done enough to get me as close to my goal as possible. And other than like a niggle, a couple of weeks out from a half marathon I did before that, everything was like ready to go. And it just wasn't my day. I started and like 2K in, I'd felt the pain come back, and it was a matter of can I sit in this pain for the full 42K? And I thought I could. And then it got to the point where I couldn't sit in the pain any longer, and it was trying to balance or manage the level of pain like on the go. So if I was like, can I slow down to bring the pain from a 9 to an 8 for a couple of minutes and then go back to a 9, sit in that for as long as I can? Can I stop, stretch, bring the pain down to a 2 and then start up again? And it will go back to a 9. So it was like making a lot of on-the-fly decisions. And I think once it got to the point where I took my like 3rd or 4th stop, I was like, okay, cool. There's no way I'm getting the time that I want, but let me just see out the race and honor the race distance. And that's what happened. I still feel as fit as ever. I still feel like I can take on the distance, and I'm confident I'll be able to do it again. But it just wasn't my day. And I think I want to pin it straight down to the injury, but I might have just not been in physical condition to do it, which is what people would or could say. But I think it was the injury.
How does it feel having done an extremely long prep, as you said, and it coming down to the day and it being an injury that affects your performance?
It is disappointing. I was very disappointed in myself. In like looking back on it, I could have done more to avoid getting injured. I could have just not taken on these additional races. I could have made the main thing and kept it that. But I also have had such an incredible 20 weeks where I've managed to travel the world. I've managed to do all these cool experiences. I've managed to be a really good like partner, brother, son. And I wouldn't trade that for 42 kilometers in 2.5 hours. Like that goal is an amazing goal to have, and it's something that I still want to strive to achieve, but not at the cost of what I was able to do for the last 20 weeks. And if I had the decision of not doing any of those experiences and telling me I could have walked away the other day with the time I wanted, but I had to miss out on everything that I wanted to, that I managed to do, I would tell you no. I would be like, give me exactly the same experience, give me the same injury, and I'll do it all again.
So is that what you meant when you said in your Instagram post, despite missing my time considerably, there is no world where I'm not proud of the work I put in?
Yeah, I've completely separated the. I think we were talking about it before, just before the in our session just before the race, where the work was done no matter what. And I think in isolation, the marathon day isn't indicative. It's a nice reflection of it, but it's not the only indication of how well the training block went, and it's not the only indication of how well I can perform in the marathon distance now. It was just how well I could have performed in the marathon distance on that given day, given all the things that built up to it. I mentioned earlier today, we were like walking 20 to 30,000 steps a day in the build up to the race. Obviously not the best prep. When you're abroad, I still had a 9-hour flight there. Couldn't really bring the swelling down. It's not a reflection of who I am, one, and how I think I can perform given the chance to do it again. Which is why in isolation, the race didn't go to plan. The prep did. And I'm so proud of the prep, and I'm proud of the person that I've become throughout the prep. And I think the race didn't go to plan, but I'm so okay with that.
It's great to hear how you've separated that. And I remember in our session, you saying that, saying that you've managed to separate that, which is incredibly powerful. But I wonder, during the race, when you had to manage the pain and come to terms of the realization that you weren't going to hit the time that you wanted, was it as easy as you're describing right now to process that, or was it harder?
I was very heartbroken as soon as I stopped. I've never stopped in a marathon before. Never had to walk in a marathon before. And that's not, again, to take away from anyone that does, run, walk, or stop in a marathon. It's just not something I've ever had to do. So that was we'd done a lot of if-then processing in the build-up to the marathon, but that had never even crossed my mind to consider as an if. So it was like a brand new experience stopping, and that's now something I had to deal with. And I think I came to terms with it quite quickly because I stopped, and in my head, I was ready to pull out of the race because the injury I couldn't go on. And then pulled out my phone to record the video saying I'm ready to DNF. I'm walking off the course. I just need to try and find an Uber to the finish line, etc., etc., etc. And then I finished recording that video, and I just quickly scroll through my notifications, and it was a message from one of my friends that was like, show him who MOABDIN is. And I was like, oh God, it means I have to get to the finish line now. It just means, in my head, it was an instant. Cool, I'm not going to get the time because I know I've stopped and I wasn't going to get the time, but I just have to get to the finish line. There is no world in where I'm going to DNF this race. So if I have to walk it, I'll walk it. And then I started walking for a bit, and then I jogged, and then I walked, stopped, stretched, jogged. And that was the process from 30K all the way to 42 kilometers of just stopping, stretching, jogging, walking, stopping, stretching. But it was once that decision was made that I was going to get to the finish line, I wasn't thinking anymore. It was like the time is done or the time is gone. It doesn't matter what time I now cross the finish line, whether it's 2 hours 40 or 3 hours 30. I just needed to get to the finish line, and I was okay with that immediately after I got that message. The one thing I think I would have had to wrestle a lot more with was, had I DNF'd and had I pulled out the race, would I have been able to come to terms with that? But I gave everything I had to that race, even with that stopping, starting, walking. And that's a reflection of my character, not my time. And I think that alone in isolation means that I can still claim to be who I say I am without my identity being threatened, even though I've walked in a marathon, which is not something that I'd consider myself being someone that does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think there's a couple of things to explore there. So if you entertain me, I'd like to explore.
Of course, let's explore.
So we'll save the identity stuff at the moment. We'll come back to that because I think that's really important to hear. But that moment where you had that switch in mindset, I think that's really interesting, because whether it's in a performance or whether it's in training, a lot of people would wish that they could have that almost switch moment. However, it's not so easy for it to be instigated and through our own thoughts as such.
Yeah.
What do you think it was in that moment when you received that message, that notification from your friend, that actually allows you to switch from, I'm just going to DNF and I'm okay with that, to, no, I'm going to keep going and finish the race regardless?
I think he just reminded me of something that I, for a brief second when I stopped, forgot. And that was like, I'm a really, really hard worker, and I can sit in discomfort indefinitely. And for me, it was when I'd stopped, I was like, I'd lost the time, and that was fine. And then in my head, I was like, okay, if I'm not going to get the time, there's no point continuing to sit in pain, because then it's not going to be worth, like, you're not getting the time. So what is the point of the next 12K of pain? There isn't, it's not worth anything. And then that text reminded me that it's not about it being worth something in terms of what I can share to social media or talk about. It's worth something to me, and that's, I'm the kind of person that says they're gonna do a marathon. I don't start something and not finish it, and I would have had to come off the course in a medical tent for me to not get to the finish line. And that might be deemed toxic, but that's just the kind of person I am. It's like, if I can get to the finish line, I will get to the finish line, whether that means like whether I can get there in the time that I wanted to or not. A marathon is a really, really tough distance, and I'm going to honor that distance every single time, whether I cross the finish line in the goal time or not. And his message was just an instant reminder. And I think it's so powerful because it's just my name. He just said, remember who MOABDIN is. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like, you know, remind yourself of your character, your hard work. Remind yourself of all the times in training where you wanted to give up because you were in pain. It was a very different pain in the race, but it's still pain. Pain is just a call to action. Pain isn't anything beyond that. It's just telling you that something needs addressing. Can you sit in it? Can you figure out how to get to the finish line with it? And that was the approach. It was stretch, jog, walk, stretch, jog, walk, stretch, jog, walk. And that was the new approach I had, but that was going to get me to the finish line. And that's exactly what I did once I got that text.
I don't think it's toxic. I understand why you say that, though, because I think on social media it's been painted as toxic, and in some regards for good reason. But if you can justify it in your brain that it's still a move towards your goal, which in this case wasn't Chicago completing the race in a certain time, it was moving towards MOABDIN. And as we try to do in all walks of life, then as long as it's a move towards it, it's not a toxic move at all, right? It may be perceived as toxic for someone else who'd say, I wouldn't get myself injured for the sake of that. But for you, you value that and you think that's okay, then who is anyone else to say that that's toxic? But then also equally on the other side, if someone says, no, I don't want to get injured, then fair enough. That's completely fair too. No, neither choice is the wrong choice or less disciplined than the other. I would say both are very disciplined, and both, as long as they move towards the version of you. I think that brings me on to someone that we worked on. And he's talking about this instigating moment of who is MOABDIN and that message being sent, almost like a snowball, and it's kickstarting, it starts rolling, it's compounding. But it isn't just your name that brings that, it's everything that comes behind that. In psychology, we like to look at the psychology of language and how words mean more than just the number of letters on the page that they take up that space. They can take up a lot more space than those letters when we start to spider diagram the words that we attach to that and have the meaning that word has. And I think MOABDIN as a word and essential here has a lot of words attached to it. And we worked on that. We spoke about those qualities. We spoke about who you are as a runner, as an athlete, as a brother, as a family member, as a partner, right? And I think when you get that question, that those words get put in front of you, it allows you to step back, distance yourself, and recalibrate almost. So I'm curious, in that scenario, when we speak about choice point, which is the psychological concept of choosing to go either towards or away from a goal, if we really simplify it, but the goal being a goal value of who you want to be, rather than just finish the Chicago Marathon, is to be this version of MOABDIN that we've created. Yeah. Do you think that you did your moves were towards, or were they away at a certain point in that decision, before that decision?
I think they were definitely towards, and we touched on this as well. And I think one of the quotes, again, I always live by is all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. You just have to make sure that you do all you can do. And it was can I get to getting to the finish line was enough. I just had to get there. That was the all I can do bit, and that was enough. There wasn't a moment where I then doubted I could get to the finish line. It was, how can I get there? And does that choice in getting there, is that working towards who I believe I am? And the answer was yeah. And obviously the two choices were DNF or just get there by any means necessary. And DNFing would have taken me further away from who I would like to be, or who I thought I was. And that's why that text message was so simple but so powerful. It was just a reminder of that quote. Is it's enough. MOABDIN is enough. Just get to the finish line, and prove that basically to myself and no one else.
How could you? That seems like a really powerful tool. How could you use that moving forward?
I think it's important to take stock of your wins, and just when is enough actually enough. And I think moving forward, I'd like to use that more in just everyday life. I mentioned again earlier to you that I can just take on another marathon in a few weeks, recover, rest the legs. This is the fittest I've ever been. It feels almost a waste to let the fitness take a bit of a dip and just focus on other distances and not try and keep chipping away at this goal until I get the goal, and then I can redirect my focus. But I've made the conscious decision to redirect my focus now and just sit with the fact that I haven't got my goal, because the attempt was enough. The attempt told me or gave me everything I needed out of that. And it's not the time, because if I got that time, I would have just moved on to the next time. So it's not the time that was going to be this is enough now. Now you can be proud of your achievements. It's I'm proud of my achievements now. That's enough. Let me realign my focus to something else. And we can always come back to that time at a later stage. But that's something that I want to take forward with me, is that I did all I can do in the training, and I did all I can do on race day. So that's enough. That's that is where I feel accomplished in, not in whatever, number was on the board as I crossed the finish line. That had nothing to do with how I felt. How I felt was, did I do everything that I said I wanted to do? And did I give it every bit of effort that I had? And the answer was yes. So that's enough. That's my win. I've succeeded. And now I can come back to that goal another time, but I can pivot, let my fitness drop, focus on all the other things that I want to focus on, or pick up a brand new sport and still feel accomplished, even though I didn't cross the finish line in the time that I wanted, because it's so arbitrary.
I think that's really important for people to hear. The ways in which we validate those expectations that, may I add, we've only set ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes they could be external influence, without a shadow of doubt, whether that's social media, a coach, a family member. When you're young, especially, parents can influence the expectations you have on a performance. But you've, for the most part, when you're an adult, you've set those expectations yourself, and the validation criteria isn't something that's set in stone. You're the one who's deciding what's on that criteria, what you've got to tick off to make sure that you've met the mark, a passing grade as such. And there's certain parts of us that can question that, especially the critical voice, the perfectionist voice. I know we've spoken about the perfectionist voice for you. It sounds great that you've come to terms with that validation right now. Is there any part of you, that perfectionist voice, that still questions that?
I wouldn't say there's a part of me that still questions it, but I can walk you through my thought process between starting the race, or even just a little bit before the race, and actually, I think I've come to terms with a lot of it, like on the flight back and since finishing the race. But when I'd finished the race, I mentioned to you earlier, I know those goals were like self-imposed, but there was also brand deals riding on the time. There was a lot of like actual financial stake, and personal stake for me, and like on getting this time. So it was, the perfectionist in me was like just basically like, you're putting it all on the line because you don't want to just run in a bit more pain, or you just want to push through this barrier, or you failed to get your time, or you're failing to get your time. The whole like last 12K of the race, I was constantly reminding myself that that part of me, the perfectionist voice of me, was constantly trying to make his way in and say that you are not who you say you are, you're failing, you're not good enough, you're all of the things that they love to do when things go sideways, and all those thoughts that creep up. It's only natural to have those thoughts as well. Like I'm not just a person that can so easily give myself grace. I do, take a beating from my own mind sometimes. And I think it took a few days to come to terms with where I am now, which is why I feel like I'm in a much better place now. But yeah, crossing that finish line, and even a little bit after that, I was thinking, damn, have I lost out on the brand deals? Have I put up this whole thing? And I think it also comes from who I am as a character as well, in knowing that that I would feel that way about someone putting out an audacious goal that they didn't necessarily have the evidence that they could achieve. And like, as a world-class hater, I would say, they chose a random number because it sounded cool, and now they're training towards it, and obviously they were going to flop. And look, I was right, they flopped. And I think my post, when I put on Instagram, got like just over 100 shares, and not to people's stories. So that means people had sent it to other people, not like put it publicly. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in 100 group chats and everyone's grilling me saying, I told you so. I knew he wasn't going to make it. This guy's blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why am I thinking that? Like, what is that saying about how I view people that miss their goals? And then that kind of served as a reminder that maybe they're saying, oh my God, look how incredible this run was, or, how he persevered through pain, or how he managed to miss his goal time by walking and still managed to get his second fastest marathon time. Like, it could have been so many different reasons, but my mind immediately, or the perfectionist side of me, it immediately went to, how is this, hating version of Mo, and how is this guy doing all of this when he can't even get a 2:30 marathon? That's what my mind immediately went to. But I've since sat with those thoughts and realized how kind of ridiculous they are. They're just a bit silly. It's the best way to describe them.
I like the idea of talking about this hater Mo. I'm interested to know a bit more about him, to be fair. During the race, he was obviously showing up. Post-race, it sounds like he's been quite abundant, quite bad. How do you challenge him, and how have you challenged him to make sure that his shouts, his cries are, I guess, neutralized almost?
It's a few different things. One of them is a technique that we obviously worked on, where like, you just got to realize that you are the bus driver, and these are just thoughts at the back of the bus, and you can kind of put them where you want on the bus. They don't have to be like at the front, they don't have to be in your ear, and they definitely don't have to have any hand on the steering wheel. They're just the passenger. But I've actually tried to be curious. That's the one thing that I think has worked a lot, is like, why do you think that? Like, what is that saying? How is that how you feel about other people that miss their goal? And quite like just having a genuine curiosity and kind of dialogue with that voice, and asking, what is it that is bringing you to these conclusions? Do you feel that way about other people that put up their goal? Do you truly feel like if someone missed a goal, they're worthless? Do you feel like, have other people, just asking the right questions, have other people missed their goal and still managed to get brand deals? Have other people missed their goal and then trained again and got their goal? Is that something that you can see yourself doing? Are these thought patterns serving you, or are they taking you away from the person that you claim to be? Why you think, like, are these thoughts worth like addressing further, or attaching a sense of, like, a strong sense of identity or belief to, or are they just passing thoughts that I can kind of dismiss at a whim? And yeah, it was that dialogue of trying to understand where they came from, why they're there, and whether or not I actually believe them, rather than dismiss them immediately and then pretend like they don't exist, which I think can sometimes be a bit, it's an easy way out of those thoughts, but sometimes you have to sit with the uncomfortable thoughts and try and reason with them and understand why your mind even allows those thoughts in. And then two, is whether you want to take them and put them as part of your like identity, or you want to just be like, okay, cool, thank you for this thought. You've allowed me to process something that I hadn't considered before about maybe how I feel about other people, or about points that I need addressing in my life. And then now I can let you go, and we can I can now work on the next thought. And that was a matter of that, and also just remembering that I'm always still the bus driver, and these are just thoughts at the back of the bus.
That's brilliant. But I like the fact that you're referencing what we spoke about, which is
honestly, it like, the sessions are there for a reason. I remember these things for a reason, because they work. So
I'm glad they landed. But I think that I really enjoyed hearing you talk about that, to be fair, because I think that just shows you how the compassion for the non-compassionate voice can actually help diffuse and neutralize the threat of it. How the acceptance of that voice, but not the fusion of that voice. So we're not accepting it to be a whole part of us, but we're accepting it to be a present part of us, is incredibly powerful to reduce its power in that moment.
Certainly.
And those were a lot of questions that you just went through there. Easier to do on a 9-hour flight back to England, but not so easy to do in the 3.5-hour marathon, right? So like, how did we do that process actually on the track, on the road?
I think it happened like in an instant. It was just one of those where, I know we spoke about it again before, where there's a time for addressing certain thoughts and there's a time for suppressing certain thoughts. And I was like, with 10K to go, I don't have it in me to like sit down and process and address all of these. So everything's just going to go to the back burner. Right now, I'm just focusing on, the best way to picture it is, do you know that road in, I think it's in like Belarus or it's just a mountainous road where like drivers really can fall off. Like, especially you gotta have like, I don't know what it is, but buses tend to fall off those cliffs quite a lot. And it's like, that was me. I was like, okay, let me focus on this, on navigating this tricky terrain, and then I can address all the passengers in the back once we're clear and back on like smooth sailing. So it was one of those where I was so like focused on just getting to the finish line that I didn't want to even entertain any thoughts during the race. Once I'd made the decision, like I'd made the decision to DNF, I then made the decision to keep going. And once that decision was made to keep going, nothing else, like there was no more processing. Everything was being suppressed. It was like, just get to the finish line. It doesn't matter how long it takes you. It doesn't matter how many times you need to stop. Just get to the finish line, and then address everything that, address the social media, address the posts, address how you're going to spin the narrative to not, bruise your ego later. Everything else was just about getting to the finish line. So I don't think I'd done much processing or like asking those questions and coming up with answers in the race. It was all post-race on the 9-hour flight, on the like in the hotel room the day after, in the shower, all of those things. That's where the processing happened. Even right now in this conversation, I'm still processing a few of the things, but I don't think I processed much in the race. I kind of just suppressed everything and just went into straight action.
I think there's some things that you do need to process, but those things are, if we can bucket them as helpful or productive or unproductive in the moment, because we want to listen to some thoughts, don't we?
Yes.
But I really like that analogy of the winding road, where the road deserves the attention right now, not the thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when a message comes up on your phone, do you look at it straight away and feel like you need to reply straight away, or can we just sit for a moment and we can reply to that message because the message is still going to be there?
Yeah.
The message in this case being the thought's still going to be there, nagging us, asking the questions at the end, but we don't need to give it our attention right now because the priority isn't replying to the message, it's navigating the course.
It's exactly that. Like my phone is in my pocket right now and it's buzzed throughout this conversation, but I'm not going to check it, you know? So that's the perfect like analogy for how I felt in the race. My mind was buzzing, but it wasn't like, this isn't the time to check it. Right now it's the time to finish what we're doing, finish the mission, and then I can check all the notifications and address them later. That's the perfect analogy.
I think we've done that throughout our sessions. Yeah. We've combined to create some good analogies.
No, for sure.
Which I think help make those abstract thoughts and emotions sometimes a little bit more tangible during a performance, where we don't have the time or mental capacity to devote that much time to them, I guess.
Yeah.
So we've done quite a bit of work. We've worked for a few months now in the build up to Chicago. You've done a lot of mental reps, which are in addition to the physical reps, which is great. The mental miles, the physical miles, all been racked up. I'm curious, because we've shared already a couple, which mental tool or framework or analogy has landed with you best, that you supported you well in Chicago?
Well, firstly, I want to say I'm like super grateful for all the work that we have done. I do think that the mental reps made the biggest difference in this race compared to London, which was just before we started working together. London Marathon, where I was so in my head for the majority of the race. And I think that wasted so much energy that could have been directed to just getting on with it. And that's what really helped in Chicago. I think the biggest one for me was probably being able to, and we go back to the bus driver analogy quite a lot, but it's just the separation of thoughts and body, or thoughts and the highest version of me, or the me that can actually think these thoughts, because you get to choose which thoughts you want to identify with, if any. And if not, then there's always a version of you that exists solely as just a bus driver, or just someone sitting down watching the clouds go past, which is one of those the sessions in the app. And I think just having that individual character outside of all of these other things that can possibly come, that's been the biggest one, because it's so easy to just be like, nope, okay, cool, let that one pass, or like having an impenetrable filter of this person that can, like, none of these thoughts have to be a part of my identity if I don't want them to, and the choice is always always in my hand. That's where I think has been one of the most powerful things, because it allows me to then be curious about them if I want to be curious about them, and like you said, be compassionate to these thoughts as well, and because they do sometimes serve a purpose, but it's the being able to isolate yourself from them regardless has been the most powerful one for me.
That's brilliant. Well, I think that brings us to let's explore our work then, because at the start of our work we got you to do the mental edge assessment on the app. So we got to answer 24 questions and it played back your mindset. We've spoken about it since in session. We've used it as something to give us a guidance of what we're going to work on, as well as the things that have come up throughout the prep. And some of the limiting patterns that were played back resonated with yourself. So what I would like to do now is I'd like to read back some of those limiting patterns. And I just want to get your thoughts on them a few months now down the line, and how maybe they did or did not show up in Chicago. Sound good? Let's do it. So the first one I thought was quite pertinent was over-analysis. And the description for this was, your tendency to overanalyze can lead to paralysis by analysis, causing you to miss opportunities for spontaneous action.
That was one I definitely didn't fall victim to during the race. I think that's, yeah, something that we had worked on, and the fact that I was able to, I think it was that conversation, to be fair, a couple of weeks out from the race, where we spoke about addressing and suppressing, and that just the idea of not having to overanalyze everything because of the tools that and the frameworks that we'd set up in advance meant that I can just get on with it and decide a little later down the line to process everything. It'll probably come up, but I'm jumping the gun here. I think this is the quickest I've ever mentally bounced back from a race. And I know in one of the questions that were there is like how I tend to overanalyze even after the race. And I think I've analyzed, not overanalyzed. And I think I've bounced back quite quickly. Whereas when I done the assessment initially, it was one of the struggle points is I tend to not bounce back so quickly and try and I would beat myself up, or I'd try and find the thing that there's always something that I'm missing. I try and look for what I was missing, and there wasn't anything I was missing. It just, some things can just not be your day on the race, and that's okay. And I think, coming to terms with that was really powerful for me post race. But yeah, sorry, we'll go back to this mid race.
No, I think that's fair, because we're probably going to cross over something in a second, and I want you to remind me if I lose my train of thought of that there, because I think it's going to come up perfectly. But just to give light to something that we did speak about with overanalysis being pre-race, worrying about certain things, and we spoke about the pairs game of the classic children's game of flipping over cards and trying to match pairs. And we decided, we flipped over one card and we looked at it as a worry about what would happen in Chicago potentially. And then we tried to find the matching card that would neutralize that worry, and that card was confidence or evidence that worry would not be a problem, or you could navigate it efficiently. I'm curious to know whether any of those worry cards came up, and whether you were able to efficiently neutralize them.
It was one we literally spoke about just before the race. As soon as I started the race, 2 kilometers in, the pain in my Achilles and calves had started. That was the worry. And the flip card was, I'd literally sat in half marathon of that pain 2 weeks prior. So I knew I can at least get through 21K because I'd just done it. And then from 21K, so that neutralized the thought immediately, despite my body already saying, okay, cool, we're in pain. I know I can sit in 21K of it, bare minimum. So any thought between 2 and 21 was immediately neutralized. From 21 onwards, it was a new worry. It was okay, cool. How much longer can I sit in this pain? And will that get me to the finish line? Can I do something about it? And that's where I guess another thing that we worked on was to make where choice point came in, where can I make a choice that can bring this pain a little bit down, but still allow me to pursue the goal that I wanted to pursue, or still allow me to get to where I wanted to go? And the answer was yes. If I was to slow down by about 5 seconds per kilometer, the pain went from a 9 to a 7. 7 is a lot more tolerable, and I'm still making the choice to be the best version of me. And I think there's a point where the answer would have been no. You just have to sit in that 9, and that's how you be the best version of you. But at this point in the race, it was cool, if I can bring it down to a 7, I then might be able to push it to a 9 for the last 10K and sit in that. And so I made that choice. Didn't have to worry about the tossing and turning between my thoughts of, should I slow down, should I speed up, which is what I was doing a lot in London. I think I got a lot better at making a choice, knowing that it was towards the final goal of me, or the best version of me, and then sitting in that choice rather than having to constantly toss back and forth. And then at 30K, it was just a 10 no matter what I was doing. So that was But definitely the worry and the neutralizing thought was there from the jump. as soon as I reminded myself that I'd just done half marathon on the same legs. So that helped.
I think there's a perfect, if you don't mind, if I correct me if I'm wrong, perfect example of choice point working really well in the race, where you said ordinarily you would think walking, it wouldn't align with your identity.
Yeah.
I remember I run, right? Yeah. I shouldn't be walking in a marathon. How in that moment the choice point, a towards move ordinarily in a marathon would look like an action of running. Yeah, okay, that's moving towards my goal, the version of who I believe myself to be. Walking, that's a move away. But in this scenario, we got to a certain point where when we speak about over-analysis, and the analysis was, I guess, reduced because we could see the walking in this scenario was a towards move. It was flipped. It was still a move towards.
Yeah. Right. Well, it was the only move towards that I had. The other option was the DNF. So when walking became the only move towards, it became a move towards. So yeah, like you say, naturally it would have been a move away from my goal because, okay, cool, you're not getting the time you want. You're not even running at this point. But yeah, it did become, and that's what's so important about being able to be present when making these decisions, because what might be a move away before the race is a move towards during the race, or what might be a move away 5 minutes ago might now be the right move to make. And that's the importance of having that choice, you know, just reminding yourself, being present, that the choices you're making at this very moment can be very different, can give you very different outcomes to 5 minutes ago. And yeah, so when walking became the only option and the move towards, compared to the DNF, which would have now been the move away, walking took precedence. And that allowed me to sit in that, knowing that I'm making the right choice because I'm still moving towards my goal.
Mm. And I think in that scenario, the move towards, like, it wasn't rooted in sort of analyzing whether whether this was going to be a damage to your identity. And I think that now is going to, a reason I bring it up is going to come back to what we said a second ago. Your other limiting pattern that was quite prevalent was pressure to perform. And this was the drive to prove yourself, that you can create a fragile sense of self-worth, leading to anxiety and a fear of failure. Now, in that scenario, the drive to prove yourself is proving that identity, right? So how did that come up or not come up in Chicago?
I'll be real. I was terrified at the start line and terrified at the 30K mark when I put so much pressure on this race to perform, to get the time goal that I wanted to get, that I was so scared of even entertaining a thought that I might not be able to, and what that could possibly look like. And I think being able to challenge that wasn't something I was even prepared to do up until the point that I had no option but to challenge it. And the question was, like, are you so fragile that this arbitrary number that you plucked out of the sky is the only thing that can make you happy after finishing a marathon? Like, is the only thing that can make you feel like worth? And the answer to that was an immediate and quite a refreshing no. Like, it's not the only thing. You're not that fragile. You're not. It's just a race. It's just a bit of running at the end of the day. It's 2.5 hours. It's 3 hours of running. It's 5 hours of running. Like, you know, it's not. Humans are so much more like complex than a number on a screen, and one goal in one incident, and you can't attach so much value and worth and on the outcome of one day. And it's not even a whole day, it's 2.5 hours of someone's day. Like, I've lived 29 years, almost 30 years of life. There's so much more worth outside of that than there is in this one moment. And like I was saying earlier, you can't have your identity attached to an isolated incident, because your identity isn't an isolated incident. It's an accumulation of 30 years worth of different incidents, and so many more of them are what I value myself and what I pride myself on. Just because one goes against that, and even then it doesn't really go against that, it still proves I work hard at things. It still proves I can do challenging things. It still proves that I can push through and persevere. All positive qualities. Just because a time didn't get hit doesn't mean all of those qualities now disappear. And that really helped allow me to not feel bruised in my ego or my identity, and not feel as fragile, which is something that it was a limiting belief before, and I think now not so much.
Congruency between you and your ideal self is the thing that we want to achieve. As humans, that's what we always want to achieve. We want to make sure that there's an alignment between our actions and who we say we are. However, at times we can be our own worst enemy by neglecting certain actions as alignment, and perceiving that certain actions are the only way to align. There's only one action that aligns me here, which is running the 2:30 marathon. That is the only alignment here. That's the only way that I can actually satisfy that and validate it. And we spoke about it only a week ago during taper week, about how struggles of taper for someone that's a high performer and wants to go and always do everything they can to perform, for them to align with their perceived version of self, they think that the criteria there, or the validation criteria, is to continue to train, continue to push myself, when instead the validation criteria during a taper week looks very different to the criteria a few weeks out, right? So I wonder for you, what was that criteria, not during taper week, but during Chicago, that you were happy to move away from quantitative data to qualitative data?
I think the criteria very quickly became, are you determined? Are you a hard worker? Can you still be an inspiration? Can you serve as hope? And that's something we touched on with one of the quotes, is like, what is to give light must endure burning. And am I still providing hope and inspiration to people by not getting my time and by telling the story that way? And like, so jokes, because I got a fortune cookie after the race, and it said, I'm going to butcher the quote. I actually took a photo of it though, but it was like along the lines of like, success isn't the amount of times that we like win, but it's the amount of times that we rise when we fall. And it was like, this is a perfect fortune cookie for exactly what I needed to read. It was just, we went to a restaurant and it was just there. And I was like,
serendipitous, right?
It couldn't have been, I couldn't have got a better fortune cookie. And it was just like, yeah, that was it for me. It was realizing that, can I still serve as everything I want to? Can I still serve as that light, by burning, not in getting the 2:30, but by burning in the perseverance of pushing myself towards this challenge, by still talking about how I've come to terms with not getting the time that I wanted and potentially chasing that time again, or even closing the book on that chapter altogether. Because at some point in my life, there's going to be a time where I run my fastest race and I won't get any faster. Does that mean I now become a hopeless individual and I can't, provide hope for other people despite not being able to physically push myself? Or is there still a way of sticking with the character traits that I admire in myself, in a lot of people, and using that as the catalyst for more hope? And as long as I can still provide hope, I'm still in alignment with who I say I want to be, and the actions can still be congruent to that identity. And for me, that hope was not in getting a 2:30 anymore, but it was in proving that I can still cross the finish line despite being in pain. It was in proving that your goal time isn't the only indication of a good hard work or determination. A marathon isn't the only thing that can prove your worth. The training block is plenty of proof. And going back to rise again for another challenge, you know, rising to meet the roads once again, because it's so easy to mentally tap yourself out and be like, I'm so done with this sport, or I'm so done with that, you know. I think the story, and Alex Hormozy talks about it, like the bigger the dragon that you're slaying, the better the story. And I think had I got that goal time, it would have been a cool story. But now, after not getting it, it's like, okay, now there's a story brewing. Now we're in the, you know, we're in the second act, about to enter the third act, where the main character's down and out, and it's like, this is the Rocky montage. And obviously in a movie it lasts for like 5 minutes. For me, I can't just pick another marathon so quickly. This will probably last for a whole year. But how can I turn this year into another bundle of hope that people can look at and be like, yeah, that's inspirational.
Yeah, when you said that quote, I really liked it. I hadn't heard it before. And I liked your rendition or interpretation of it as well. Rather than it being a sadistic burn, that burn can provide energy, warmth, and light in different ways. And it does definitely come back to the identity stuff, and that being, correct me if I'm wrong again, please, but like a cornerstone of what informs that identity. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely.
And when we think about a time, 2 hours, 30 minutes, that is a dramatic reduction in what that quote means, how powerful it is, but also who MOABDIN is as a person. 2 hours 30 is not you, right? And that doesn't mean that what is to give light must endure a burning. It can be, that quote can be lived in line with as long as you hit 2 hours 30. That when you think about it, that probably actually is a disrespectful number. That's not enough. That's not enough to actually validate living by that.
Yeah.
And I think when we spoke about the bouncing back post race, having that front of mind means that we can reduce the impact that not hitting a time has. Is that fair to assume where you are now?
Yes, 100%. I think, yeah, I think it's so important to know that I go on about the story, but the story in not hitting the time and in being able to still go back towards it gives so much more power to that quote than just hitting the time first time and okay, cool, he endured 20 weeks of burning, but 20 weeks is like nothing compared to like, you know, can Mo not get the time he wants? Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe 5 times. Like, how many times can he persevere? Like, imagine Rocky won his first fight in the after his little training block, and he just won the first. How boring a film would that be? You know, so it's you want to see. I think it makes for a really good story when someone is down and out and someone has tried, and it makes for an even better story. The reason there's 5 or 6 Rockies is because he doesn't just continue to go on and win. He faces a bigger enemy and loses the first time he takes on that, I say enemy, that other fighter. And that's what the 2:30 marathon was for me. It was just another fight in an endless there's always going to be another time. There's always going to be another fight to fight. And if I'd lost to it now, but that doesn't mean I won't be back for it. That doesn't mean I won't attempt it again. And that doesn't mean that just because I'd lost the first time, that quote now loses all its meaning. That quote is still there. And if anything, I can shine brighter given the fact that I didn't get it the first time, because there's so many people that don't get their goal the first time and would give up because of that. And I think I can shine brighter knowing that despite giving the best 20 weeks that I could have possibly given, it still wasn't enough. And that's so powerful, because some people can't sit with the fact that what they did wasn't enough. And that's a really tough thing to sit with. It's like, my absolute best just wasn't enough. But that's okay. And I'm okay with that. And my absolute best will look very different the next time. And that's why I'm actually quite excited to see, is like, okay, damn, like what could Mo look like now? Like if his absolute best was this, what's next? And I think I could have even turned into complacency had I got the time. Had I just, there's a sense of, I don't know what to do now. Now that I've got my time and I've done 20 weeks, and I've spent so much time going for this one goal and I got it. Now what? And thankfully, I don't have to deal with that because I still know what my goal is because I still haven't got it. So there's liberation in knowing that I have something, an overarching thing that I'm not going to train for right now, but it's still there in the back of my mind as a dragon that needs slaying.
I love that. I think the best mangas are the ones that are the longest, right?
Yeah, literally.
We need to buy into the protagonist. We need to make sure that the protagonist has a good backstory. They can't just get handed things. Normally, the protagonist's enemy, so to speak, is the person who's been handed everything by talent. So in this story, it is hard work. We're learning a bit more about us. We're building up that more fuel that's been added to burn for the flame. And I'm excited. It's great to see that you've got that perspective now, moving forward. And I guess I wonder what is next for Mo then? How do you? I guess a hard question, but yeah, what's next for Mo?
What's next for Mo? It's a very good question and not one that I actually thought about as much because I was still trying to process this. I think all the character qualities that I'd listed earlier, and again, the ones that I admire the most about myself and what I see in other people, are the things I want to carry forward, but I just don't know what I want to channel them into. I still want to live by those values. I still want to continue to inspire. I still want to continue to create. I still want to continue to work hard. I just don't think I'm ready to put that towards another marathon block just yet. And that's where I think it's so important to sit in it. It would have been so easy for me to get another marathon booked in 8 weeks from now, just recover, do 4 more weeks of training, and then get the time. And then it's just like, and I'm so confident that I can get the time, but it doesn't honor the last 20 weeks if I just go for it again. It doesn't honor me. It doesn't honor my enough not being enough. And I want to let that sink in, and I want to not use my privilege to just, snap my fingers and get another race in the diary. And it's just sit with I want to say disappointment of not getting my time, but I'm not that disappointed in not getting my time. But I just want to sit with how I feel a little bit longer and let that like fully digest. And then I'll look to move these qualities into something else, but I can still have those qualities while doing nothing. And I think that's so important as well, is as someone that was go for so long, even before this Chicago training block, I only had 2 weeks off from the London training block, and that was 16 weeks long. So I've been training 36 out of the last 38 weeks. It's a lot of time to just be training. So I think I want to find the best way of keeping those traits alive without being on. And that's going to be the next challenge, is like, how can I still continue to inspire without having something to train for? How can I continue to be that light while resting or recovering? So I think, yeah, a bit of R&R, a bit of time with family, friends, might pick a whole new discipline to start. But I will still be turning the legs over. I'll still be going out on my runs once the injury has like subsided, still be cycling and still be going gym. But I just don't have the answer just yet, and that's okay. I'm kind of trying to be more okay with not knowing everything and just letting the curiosity take over and seeing where that curiosity takes me next.
It's a great answer. I'm excited. I think, like, say, letting things digest so we have an appetite and a hunger for more, it is incredibly powerful and can't be underestimated. We're also going to take a few things from that we wouldn't have. We're going to digest and absorb some nutrients that we wouldn't have absorbed and digested had we just gone straight into something. And I think in of itself a challenge for someone who is go, 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 just stopping and not doing anything. That is a challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
We joked about it on the trip where, so one of my friends is he's a massive like mental health content creator, and he always takes on this Misogi challenge next, and he was like, he didn't know what he was going to do after the marathon, and I was like, have you considered just sitting with your thoughts? That's the next Misogi, just sitting alone with your thoughts and processing them? He's like, no, that's too hard. I was like, yeah, obviously. But that's the thing, when you are someone that is go, 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 is like, what happens when you stop, and are you ready to face what that might bring up, like what might come up when you do nothing? And that's my next challenge, is to just sit with those thoughts, see what comes up, and then and figure out from there.
Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I think the real therapy starts when you stop running.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Like, I think a lot of people use running as, they say it's their therapy, but it's their distraction from the real therapy. It's their endorphin releasing, oh, I feel great after it and I can process thoughts during it. But what actually happens when you don't have that as a crutch to lean on? And that's why people's mental takes a massive dip when they get injured, because you actually have to address things that you've been distracting yourself for so long for. And yeah, 16 weeks, 2 weeks off, 20 weeks, I've been distracted. So now it's time to like confront everything that running has been distracting me from. In a good way. I owe so much to running, but I think there's a lot of things that might come up, and I'm excited to see what they are. But I'm also, I'm more apprehensive about what might come up during these next like 4, 5, 6 weeks than what could come up during a marathon, which is insane.
Well, I'm looking forward to supporting you through that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one more question. Just one more. And I want you to maybe, I don't know if you're going to have an answer straight away. You might. If not, have a sit and think about it. If the old you could see how you handled Chicago, what would have surprised them most?
I think the speed and the compassion in how I was able to handle all the thoughts that came up. Because the old me, which was also referred to as like the Karen mode that we had, is like would have been so easy to just be like, oh, you're weak. you like these thoughts that are making, like, you stopped in a marathon, you're weak. But the fact that I was able to dismiss those so quickly, but also find curiosity in why I felt that way, or even post-marathon, like, again, with the post getting so many shares, why did I immediately think those shares were people, basically talking bad on me, when it could have been people, so inspired? And I only sat with those thoughts so briefly before I actually had genuine curiosity for them. So I think the curiosity and the speed in which I was able to get to that curiosity to then challenge what came up would be something that previous Mo would not even just be like proud of, but like shocked to see that I've come like this far mentally, because that would have been my 1 rep max, and now it's my warm up, is the best way to describe how quick the mental transition of it. That's something I would have had to pen, paper, sit down with maybe for a few hours, or come back and address it again. And I was able to process it, not just in my head, but quite quickly in my head as well, and just have that kind of conversation. So, and I think that's just what is so good about like these things, is the more you do them, the more you get your mental reps in, the quicker the practice becomes, and the easier the practice becomes. And something that could trigger you and ruin your whole day can now trigger you and ruin 10 seconds. And it's like, okay, cool, now I'm back to living the life that I want to live. But it can be done. And the same way a marathon could take you 5 hours or 6 hours, it can now be done in 3 hours. And then you have 3 more hours to go about and live your day. So the shorter you can get the the shorter you can process these thoughts, and your brain works so unbelievably quickly that ruminating is a choice. Like, ruminating is a choice. You can actually process these things quite quickly. The better you can kind of not necessarily sweep it under the rug, but like go through the whole process and then go about the rest of your day. And it's just a matter about speeding those processes up so they don't leak over into other aspects of my life. It's when something comes up, address, suppress, deal with, figure out, curiosity, all of the processes, move on, keep going. And the quicker I can get that process in, the better my life ultimately will become, I think.
Did you write that answer down before you came?
No, I did not. Straight. It was the thought process.
That was great. I could see you exploring it as well. That was amazing. Oh, Mo, congrats again, mate. And thank you so much, not just for today, but your like engagement throughout all the chats that we've had.
Yeah, I honestly think it was beyond the physical training. The mental training was the only thing that made the experience remotely enjoyable on the course. When you're sat in so much physical pain, it's so easy to get into your head and forget everything that you've trained for. And the fact that I'd done the mental training allowed me to not have to deal with that on the race. And that really, really, really made a massive difference for me. And also to walk away with, this is the first time I've ever done a marathon that I've trained for slower than the previous one. And that would have been so easy to feel like a fraud or feel unaccomplished. And I feel more accomplished at this goal than any other. So that's all down to the mental training that we've managed to do in the last few months. I'm very grateful myself. So thank you.
Thank you, man. Awesome.